Well, happy Friday, everybody. It's, of course, another edition of Beyond Reason Radio here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. Well, before the show, Tom Benson, I think a little tongue-in-cheek, asked me, what's the big topic for tonight? Gee, I wonder. I don't know. You know, I could. There actually is a lot of other stuff going on other than what's happening in Baltimore. I mean, did you get a cake, and did you celebrate Sunrail's first anniversary?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's their birthday today. It's Sunrail's birthday. Let's celebrate.
Let's go for a ride.
Yeah, we'll be a part of the 3 people. Well, we'll get their numbers. We'll double their numbers if you and I go for a ride. Tom Benson. All right, how are you, Tom, by the way?
I'm doing fine. It's Friday. You never bad day on a Friday. You know?
Today was like a gorgeous day.
Weather's gorgeous this weekend.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, so I guess I'll get straight to the news here. By the way, this is host Michael Yaffee. I'm sure you all know me. I produce Bud Hedinger Live on this station, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And by the way, I did another Yaffee World this morning where I talked about why 1 in 2 people in the Yaffee generation do not trust the civil justice system and do not trust government.
Why is that?
Well, at first I wasn't sure because, I mean, part of it I think is just young people don't trust authority. It's kind of the nature of things.
Well, when I was a kid growing up, they used to say, never trust anyone over 30.
Yeah, see, there you go. But I actually found an editorial from Investors Business Daily where he argued that it's because we're not properly educated on how it all works, on how the government works, on how the civil justice system works. And when you're not educated about how it works, you tend to fear it.
Sure.
You don't understand it, and you don't like it.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting take, and there was a study out, I think it came out last week, where I think a quarter of 8th graders, only a quarter did well on civics and government.
Do they teach civics anymore in school?
1 semester. 1 semester out of 4 years of high school, they teach 1 semester of American government, which to me is completely outrageous.
Sure.
Because to me, I would think the main purpose of education is so you, as an individual, can be able to participate in self-government and participate in the political process in this country. You would think that would be the main purpose of education, but it's not. It's not anymore. Most of it's indoctrination, but they kind of see it as, well, we're training you for the workforce. That's what they see the main, and they do a terrible job at that too. So, but I don't know. Our whole education system needs to be completely reformed. And I'm not talking about testing or not testing. I'm talking about the curriculum. I'm talking about what is being taught. And I'm actually going to get to that later in the show. There's some battles in Florida in some counties where some counties are getting rid of a lot of the standardized tests and a lot of the testing at the end of the semesters, while other counties are not willing to do it as much. So it's an interesting take. But as many of you know, the big story today is Baltimore. And we had charges brought against the 6 police that dealt with Freddie Gray, who was eventually killed in police custody in Baltimore. And we had riots this week after his funeral. And, of course, now the new issue that is we can't call the rioters thugs. That's a whole other issue. Apparently that's the new N-word. I didn't know that. Eventually we're just not going to be able to say the word criminal. If you say the word criminal, that's going to be the new N-word.
Well, you can't say illegal alien.
That's true. They're undocumented workers.
Yes.
Okay. Anyways, we had Marilyn Mosby, who was a state attorney for Baltimore, who made an announcement today and to bring charges against the 6 officers. They said first they illegally arrested Freddie Gray, that he shouldn't have been arrested in the first place because he was not committing a crime. Now, he had a rap sheet, and he ran from police, and that's probably why police chased him. They probably knew who he was. But, okay, if it's illegal, that's fine. There's also one of them's being charged with second-degree murder. I believe that's the driver of the van. Most of them are being charged with misconduct and involuntary manslaughter. Here's my take on this. A lot of people think that because I'm a conservative talk show host, that I'm automatically on the side of the officers, that I don't think they should be charged at all. Look, what I'm for what I promote and defend on this show is I'm going to be for real justice. The real justice system actually working. This is how the justice system's supposed to work. If there's a crime anywhere, there's an investigation. All the evidence is looked at. The investigation is completed, and then charges are brought forth. And then they're arrested, and then there's a trial, or it's put in front of a grand jury. The evidence is looked at, and the person is innocent until proven guilty, and then they're convicted if the evidence warrants it. That's how it's supposed to work. So if the evidence warrants these officers being arrested, if the evidence warrants these officers being charged, and I have to admit the state attorney did make a good case on that this morning in her press conference, then I'm totally okay with that. What I was not okay with is when the riots were happening, the protests were happening, everything was happening, they didn't let the justice system work. What they're against, they say they're for justice. But everything I just described to you, that is justice. Justice is not rioting and, taking someone automatically guilty, taking him and saying he needs to be arrested now without the evidence being presented, without looking at the evidence, automatically assuming someone is innocent or guilty. That's not justice.
Where is the justice for the people who own the buildings that were burned out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's not justice. The riots are not justice. That's chaos. And, when I posted this on Facebook, on the Beyond Reason Facebook page today, my thoughts on this, which you can go to facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. And I had some comments on this in my personal Facebook page where they're saying, well, I don't think this is going to quell the violence in Baltimore. I don't think her bringing charges for us is really going to help anything. You might be right. It might not help anything in the big scheme of things in terms of the rioting and the violence in Baltimore. But that's not the purpose of the justice system. This is not the purpose of what she was supposed to do. Justice is looking at the individual case, looking at the evidence, and going from there in the investigation. Justice is meant, and the justice system is meant to protect individual liberty. So a state attorney, and this can go both ways, she should not bring a case because, well, if I don't charge them, there could be riots in the street, or if I do charge them, there could be riots in the street. That should not come into play when you're looking at a case like this. What should come into play is the individual evidence and the individual situation, because that's what true justice is. We talk about no justice, no peace, and they're protesting, and I'm like, what do you want? What do these protesters really want? They say they want justice, but it doesn't seem like that. In the Michael Brown case, they say they want justice. Well, what happened in that case? The evidence was brought forth to a grand jury. In this case, the grand jury got all of the evidence, a lot more than most grand juries get. Okay. Then when all the evidence was presented, and the Department of Justice said this as well. When all the evidence was presented, they said, look, we cannot charge Officer Darren Wilson because the evidence doesn't support it. That's justice.
Yeah, but in their minds, justice is you decide my way.
Exactly.
That's justice.
And that's a perverse way of looking at justice.
Sure.
It's the same way with the Zimmerman trial. They looked at the evidence. Okay, they were upset at first that they didn't arrest Zimmerman, probably because the evidence didn't warrant arresting him. But fine, they finally arrested Zimmerman. It was brought in front of a court, in front of a jury. All the evidence was put forth to court for everybody to see, and he was pronounced not guilty because it didn't warrant it. Now, what if Zimmerman was black and Trayvon Martin was white? Then the justice system would have helped him in that situation. That's how justice is supposed to work. It's supposed to, you look at the individual situation because it's supposed to protect individual rights and individual liberty. That's what our country was basically founded on. That's why we have the whole innocent until proven guilty. So I would call anyone out there that's looking at this situation and saying, I want justice. I want to ask you, what is justice? I want you to think about that. What is justice really supposed to be? It's not what we saw earlier this week in Baltimore. That's not justice. Mostly that's chaos. Some of it is political opportunism, and some of it's just plain vengeance, not even based on evidence. So that's where we are on that. And when I was thinking about this case this week, it brought me into my mind of how our society works. And I think this might be the fault of social media, of the media in general, of our pop culture, who knows. But it seems like in our society, there's perception, everybody's perception of what's going on in certain things in the world. And then, on the other side, there's reality. We have this battle in this country, of perception, someone's personal perception, and the facts and reality. Think about that. Now, sometimes someone's perception can be the truth. I'm not saying perception can't be the truth, but in a lot of situations, which I'm going to bring up in the next segment, it seems like the people's perception, the pop culture perception, even the media perception sometimes does not match reality. So here on Beyond Reason Radio, we're going to have a reality check. We're going to go through some of these instances where our perception is telling us one thing, but reality, the facts, and truth are telling us another. I always tell you that this show, I am the voice of the Yaffee generation, and the main goal of this show is to be the voice of reason, to sift through all the things in the media that are beyond reason. Well, that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to sift through everything that's beyond reason, be the voice of reason, and be the voice of truth while everyone's perceiving things that are not true. 407-674-1025, 407-674-1025. You have a take on this. You are listening to Beyond Reason Radio on News Radio 1025 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio here on News Radio 1025 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com, of course. By the way, if you like the show, you can also like the show's Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/BeyondReasonRadio. You can also go like me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. Also, the station has a Twitter at News Radio 1025, and the station has a Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/WFLA Orlando. Make sure to click the like button. So in the last segment, I talked about how in our society today, a lot of people's perception is not meeting reality. In the first case of this that we're seeing a lot of lately, and the president actually brought this up earlier this week when he was commenting on Baltimore and on the riots. And I'm going to play that bite here in just a second. There's this perception out there that there's an epidemic of police brutality, especially against blacks. There's an epidemic of police brutality. There's a trend, a crisis that we need to focus on. And the president, Tom, if you could play this bite for me, the president actually mentioned this earlier in Baltimore. This is what he said about, now, bear with me, it takes forever to get to his point, as usual. By the way, did anyone see that clip where a little kid was interviewing Obama and he was taking forever to get to his point? The kid cut him off and said, "Okay, I think you answered your question." Oh man, the little kids are better at interviewing Obama than the mainstream media. Okay, enough said on that. This is the president on Baltimore.
We have seen too many instances of what appears to be police officers interacting with individuals, primarily African American, often poor, in ways that raise troubling questions. And it comes up, it seems like, once a week now, or once every couple of weeks. And so I think it's pretty understandable why the leaders of civil rights organizations, but more importantly moms and dads across the country, might start saying this is a crisis.
Is it really a crisis, though? That's the question I have for you. Is police brutality in this country, especially against blacks, is it really a crisis? 407-674-1025. If you look at social media, if you look at the mainstream media for that matter, if you listen to people like Obama, like the Al Sharptons of the world, you would think, yes, it's a crisis. Yes, this needs to be stopped. Blacks are being killed everywhere by police. In fact, whites are too. It's just an epidemic. But that's our perception. That's our perception of what's really going on. And he says it comes up every 1 to 2 weeks. Well, that's because a story, even if it's from 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, is now just being spread on social media. And even some of the stories being spread around on going viral on social media end up not being what they think it is. Sometimes, a lot of times, the police end up being justified, like what happened in the Michael Brown case with Officer Darren Wilson. So let's look instead at the facts of police. And I was looking at these numbers, and it's actually very interesting. It actually kind of floored me because the perception even of me was different until I started looking at reality and looking at the facts. Let's look at 2012. In the year 2012, there was 12 million, a little bit under 12,197,000 arrests. 12,197,000 arrests. Now, that's not even counting, dealing with police where there was no arrest, because people deal with police all the time. Police are human beings. They're in our society. They're trying to do their job. It happens. But this is just arrests. 12,196,000. According to the FBI statistics that year, 410 of those, not 4,000, not 40,000, 410 of those resulted in the use of deadly force. And remember, not all 410 were black. So it's even less dealing with blacks' deadly force. Now, I've heard that the FBI statistics are not entirely accurate. There were some who said last year, even though it said around 500, there was actually 1,000. So let's even go to the high number, that there was 1,000 deaths by police last year. 1,000 seems like a lot. It seems like, there's a crisis, there's an epidemic. But when you put it in relation to the 12 million, almost 13 million, 12 million, almost 12,200,000 deaths or arrests, when you put it in perspective, that's 0.00003% of police arrests result in the death of the person they're trying to arrest by deadly force. A fraction of the percent. That's of the 410. If we go to 1,000, it's still a fraction of a percent of when the police deals with the public, it results in a death. Is that a crisis? Would anybody else, looking at those raw statistics, looking at those numbers, think there's a crisis? No. It's not. In any other dealing, if you saw that in a poll or anything, in a statistic, in a fact sheet, we would look at that and say, well, obviously, it's not a crisis. In fact, the police must be showing incredible restraint. Because out of those arrests, it was about, I think it was around 400,000, a little bit. In 2013, it was 480,000 of those were dealing with violent offenders. By the way, let me get the exact numbers, because I was looking up the murders too, the amount of murders in the year 2013. Let me get that fact though. In the year 2013, I think it was like somewhere around 14,000 murders in that year.
Well, part of the difference is the fact that everything is highly publicized now. You think about maybe 500 years ago, you think there were, if there was a earthquake in Nepal, that you'd hear about it? Probably not. But now you hear it within...
Perception. We're leading this perception that it's an epidemic, but it's not reality. There was 14,196 murders in 2013. So you're dealing with 12 million, 13 million arrests, 400,000 of those are with violent offenders. 14,000 of those are murders. And yet, 410 resulted in a death. Or if you take some of the higher numbers, 1,000 resulted in a death by deadly force. And not all of them, and only half of those are black. Not even half are black. The evidence doesn't show there's an epidemic. The evidence doesn't show there is a crisis. But why are they putting this forth? Why are they spreading this lie then? That it's a crisis? Well, it's about the same old. Politics. It's about promoting a political agenda. Well, what is that political agenda? Well, for one, it's just, having the cops not being able to do their job. But it's interesting, and producer Tom Benson pointed this out to me, and I actually found the story on it. There's now talk by people, and this was by Al Sharpton, who said the DOJ, the Department of Justice, should start basically taking over policing in this country. The federal government should take over policing in this country. That is interesting. Once you find it there it is. The political objective. Getting rid of local control of policing, getting the Department of Justice to take over policing in this country. There's a political objective here, and it's about more power for the central government. Now, the motivations for that might be different. But doesn't that scare anybody? You think that's going to solve the problem? You want to talk about perception versus reality. That would make the problem much, much worse. So it's all about politics. Once again, it's to promote a political agenda. And we, listeners to this show, of course, conservatives, we have to look at the truth. We have to get to a society where we actually examine evidence, where we look at the truth and we're not ruled by just general perception, but we look at reality. Because there's an agenda going on here. And it's not good. Having a nationalized, Obama even said that. He had talked about in his campaign in 2007, 2008, that we should have a national police force just as strong. You think that police force is actually going to be about policing and safety and taking care of the citizens of the country and of the cities and of the states? No, that police force, once again, is going to promote a political agenda, social justice, whatever it might be. Is that what you want? We look at crime rates in this country are at all-time lows. To me, the police must be doing a great job then. That doesn't mean there aren't bad police. Of course there's bad police. These are human beings we're dealing with here. And by the way, what would be the police motivation of killing blacks or killing whites or killing anyone? Just the obsession with authority, maybe. But most of these cops, they're not making a ton of money. They don't get any more money. It's not like they get paid for every kill. No, they're just normal people trying to do a good job, making a couple figures a year, $60,000 a year at most, going home to their families, trying to live a decent middle-class life. But our perception is, they're corrupt. They're bent on power. The facts just don't show it. And by the way, another thing, we were talking about perception versus reality. Look at the Michael Brown case. The perception in that case as well was that Michael Brown, some call him the gentle giant or whatever, was innocent. Hands up, don't shoot. He had his hands up and he was killed by a white officer who shouldn't have done it. But in the end, that ended up not being true. And I'm not just saying that. The Department of Justice under Eric Holder, of all people, said that didn't happen. The evidence didn't warrant it. Perception, and it still rules for a lot of people. I see it among my friends. They still believe, he had his hands up, said, hands up, don't shoot. Perception versus reality. We have to get back to reality. And the best place to get back to reality is right here on Beyond Reason Radio. Every Friday, I'm going to give you that reality check. Okay, in the next segment, I want to get more into some other issues where perception is not matching reality, where our perception is not matching the truth. 407-674-1025. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com. Welcome back, Beyond Reason Radio, here at BeyondReasonRadio.com, where perception is reality. This is who I am. This is who I really am. There is no acting here. This is not a show. It's not me trying to just having a presentation. It's really the truth as I see it. And I am your voice of reason, the voice of the millennial generation, the voice of reason, sifting through everything that is, of course, beyond reason. And one thing that is beyond reason that kind of goes along with the theme of today's show when you're talking about perception versus reality. We talked about with the cops, perception that cops are bad, that there's an epidemic of police brutality, and the reality doesn't show that that's the case. The reality just doesn't show that's the case. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Of course it happens. You have a country of 320 million people, almost 1 million cops, almost 12 million arrests. Of course there's going to be some bad cops. There's bad people in everything. But I'm talking about reality. I'm talking about perspective. Well, here's something that is beyond reason. On April 27th, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals decided that in the Friedman versus City of Highland Park, Illinois case, I just made the common mistake that everybody makes calling it Illinois, voting 2-1 to back the city's banning of certain firearms and magazine capacities, partly based on, get this, feelings, not on evidence, not on the facts of the case, but on feelings. Wow. This is one thing that was said. If it has no other effect, Highland Park's ordinance may increase the public's sense of safety. If a ban on semi-automatic guns and large capacity magazines reduces the perceived risk from a mass shooting and makes the public feel safer as a result, that's a substantial benefit. That's what was said in the court. Wow. Unbelievable. So why are they upholding the ban on firearms in this case? Because of perception, because of feelings. That even if the evidence doesn't warrant it, the perception of guns in the community will make people feel unsafe. And if it makes them feel unsafe, then they should be justified in banning it.
Feelings.
Yes, feelings. Oh, yes.
Nothing more than feelings.
That's what the judge was saying. That's why they ruled that way. Because we want the citizens to feel safe. How about we just give them the facts that a lot of times when there are more guns in the communities by law-abiding citizens, that's what really promotes safety. But no. We have to ban certain guns because it makes them feel safer. Who cares if it actually makes them safer? Who cares about what's actually happening? Unbelievable. So another trend there of feelings of perception, because the public perceives it one way, we have to go that way. Think about if our whole government worked that way. Think about if the whole world worked that way. Feelings versus reality. I have a feeling I know what Tom's going to say here.
Most presidents are elected by feelings.
Exactly.
Instead of logic.
And where has that gotten us?
Yeah.
$18 trillion in debt. That's where that's gotten us, and none of the problems actually being solved. Another perception when you talk about the war on poverty, poverty hasn't really gone down, but we're spending tons of money and it makes us feel good. Here's another instance. This is a big one. I talked about this a lot last week and drives me crazy the most. Global warming. Climate change. There's a perception out there, once again, that weather events are getting more extreme. There's more tornadoes, more hurricanes, harsher summers, more droughts, more wildfires, and so on and so on. That's the perception, once again, promoted by social media, by the media, all for a political agenda. Just like with the police, same thing with global warming. But what are the facts? What is reality? Reality says something different. Just look at this stat. Regarding wildfires, for example, their numbers since 1950 have decreased globally by 15%. Hurricanes, as you know, have decreased. Droughts, a recent study published, indicates that globally there has been little change in drought over the past 60 years. Global hurricane activity is actually at a low not encountered since the 1970s. And it goes on and on and on. Perception versus reality. That's where we are. We have to get back to the facts. So there we go. All right. So I think I might want to move on to a different topic, but before I do that, did you happen to hear, Tom Benson?
I'm sorry?
Did you happen to hear? I see you like working on audio. I can actually hear something. What are you
I'm sorry. I'm trying to find something here for you.
Okay, did you find it yet?
Carry on. I think so.
Okay. You were playing something over there. All right. Well, did anyone happen to hear the comments by Michael Moore this week? What? Anyone take a guess out there what Michael Moore's solution is to the problem of police brutality? We should just unarm all the police. We should unarm them. And by the way, he says we don't really need them to be armed because our Second Amendment rights most of citizens have guns and they can defend themselves. Gee, I had no idea Michael Moore was a Second Amendment proponent. That was a shocker. But there you go. So is that the solution? Unarming all police? And by the way, he said every black person in prison, only black people. If a white person has this, no, they have to stay there. But any black person in a prison for a non-violent crime or drug charge, they should just be let go. They should just be let go. So there you go. If Michael Moore ruled the world and was president, that is where we would be. All right, this is just very, very interesting. I don't know how that could solve any problems, but okay. Now, I'm looking at Fox News right now. And they're talking about the protests are growing in the wake of charges against the 3 officers. Why? Why? Isn't this what they wanted? Why are there more protests? What are they protesting now? They weren't charged enough? What is happening? Like, okay, so they're protesting. Is it a celebration maybe? Do they want them to be just executed on the spot? This is what I mean when I talk about what do the protesters actually want? What do they want in this situation? Because you would think they would be getting what they're wanting right here, but they're still out there protesting. So I'm not exactly sure. 407-674-1025. When I get back, I want to talk about education in Florida. There's been a lot of talk about getting rid of testing, getting rid of the standardized test, the FCAT, and all that stuff. Some counties want to do it, some counties don't. I want to talk about the real solution. 407-674-1025. You're listening Beyond Reason Radio. News Radio 1025 WFLA. So when you were in school, did you have to take a lot of tests, a lot of standardized tests? I mean, when I was in school, it wasn't, believe it or not, it wasn't all that long ago. It was 12 years ago. I guess that is a long time. Wow, I'm getting old. Anyways, did you have to take a lot of standardized tests? I mean, I had to take FCAT and all that stuff.
When you said that, I thought of something that most people say at one time or another. When you went to school, you had to walk uphill in snow both ways, right?
No, thank God I lived in Florida. Yeah, we had to walk in the snow. It's snow for some reason in Florida on the way to school. No, but I had to take the FCAT, and I remember even by the teachers in FCAT was a joke. Nobody took it seriously. But it becomes such a problem, and it's gotten worse since I've been out of school, that the whole curriculum surrounded these tests, these standardized tests. And it's not just a standardized test. It's also the end of year exams, the end of semester exams, and all that stuff. And we think that's what it's going to take to better our education system. But that's what it's going to take to make our kids smarter. Well, there's been kind of a backlash this year, especially. Orange County is trying to get rid of their end of the year tests. Seminole County, I believe, is trying to get rid of the Florida standardized test and trying to just do one of the national ones, like the SAT or something like that, the SAT for younger students. Pasco County over in the Tampa area, they eliminate tests. They're trying to. Leon County, they're dumping their end of the course assessment tests. So there's been kind of a fight. Now, Hillsborough County, they're trying to. It's Hillsborough and Pasco are hesitant to do it. Pinellas County is another one that did it. Hillsborough and Pasco counties are a little hesitant because they think once again that's going to be what's the check. They want to check the merit of the teachers, and they think the tests are the best way to do it. Can I say something? Whether there are or are not tests, I don't think that's the problem. When you have 8th graders who don't know anything about government, and I bet it even gets worse in high school, and then in college, when they don't know anything about how the criminal justice system works, about how economics works, about how government works, and they're no longer participating in the government process. They're no longer voting. They're no longer paying their taxes like they should be. They're distrustful of the civil justice system. They feel like disenfranchised, so they're not participating. That tells me that testing is not the problem. Because what are they testing them on? If they're testing on things we don't need to know, then who cares about testing? Tells me that the problem is the curriculum. The problem is we're not allowing teachers to teach. Remember when they were having all the glitches in the state of Florida from the new FCAT, I guess they call it the FSA or something like that, and it was done over the computer and they had glitches and they couldn't do it? I remember I said on Bud Show, good. Maybe the teachers will actually get a chance to teach today. Maybe the kids will actually not take a test and learn something. Well, we need these tests to keep teachers and schools accountable. How about we let the local schools keep their own teachers accountable? How about we let the principal and the school leaders at that school, and maybe the school board who knows the teachers, who knows the students, who knows what's going on in the school, why don't we give them the power to hold those teachers accountable? And of course, that's hard to do because of the teachers' unions and the power of the teachers' union. But it just sounds like common sense. But you know how hard it is to get this done? To try to teach American history and government throughout most of school, which you think would be the main purpose of education, we can't even get that done. But to actually have maybe the principal and the administration who know the teachers personally, maybe have them be the ones who hold their teachers accountable. And, if they're not doing it, then the school board can act. And then when you actually go out to vote for your school board, you'll feel like you're making a difference because your local school board has the power to change for the positive or negative. That's why local control is good, because it allows the people in the local community to participate in the process. So you have the parents involved, the school board involved, the administration involved, and the teachers involved, looking at curriculum and actually teaching. Gee, what a thought. So there's all this talk about Common Core, about new standardized tests, about we need to spend more on the Department of Education. We need the national government, the federal government to get involved, and it's not going to solve the problem because that person in Washington or that governor in the state of Florida doesn't know your individual teacher in your school or your individual school board members. But you, as a voter in your local community, you know them. that principal knows the teacher. You know the principal. You know the people on the school board. You can have meetings directly with them and either vote to make a difference or actually have a meeting and actually get something done because you're there and you're participating. That is how the political process was supposed to work. But now, if you have a problem, if a parent has a problem with what's being taught, there's nothing they can do because it's done by the state or the national. If Common Core is put in place, it's a national thing. So they're going to have a problem with what's being taught, and they're not going to be able to do anything about it. You can vote your school board member all you want. You can get your principal fired all you want. Don't make a difference. Curriculum set. Nothing you can do. We have to do it to get the tests right. Not going to solve anything. So there's another reason why people do not participate in the political process. They don't see it as any good. And I don't blame them when it comes to locally because we have all farmed it out to the state and farmed it out to the national government. And this is why more and more people homeschool their kids. Because you actually have control over what your kid is learning in their education and their curriculum. We have to get more control. We always say parents need to be more involved, right? Well, this is the best way to get parents involved. Get the control back to the local level. It's just common sense, I think. It's just reasonable common sense, but I mean, who talks common sense anymore? All right, before I end the show today, with the whole Baltimore thing, with the whole riots thing, with the whole race issue, with even some police brutality issues. Because there have been some instances of police brutality, like the instance where the cop shot the guy running away a couple weeks ago. That was caught on camera. And I found this article. It was really interesting. That gets to the root of the problem. Now, this, of course, doesn't get a lot of attention because nobody wants to say this anymore. But this was actually, I don't know, thought very bold, very good. NFL star on Baltimore. He said, wow, this is an NFL star. Tim Tebow's not the only one who says stuff like this. We all have a sin problem. Only solution is a heart change through Jesus Christ. Yeah, maybe that would help these kids. We talk about the kids that are doing all these riots. They don't have a family structure. They don't have a home structure. They also don't have God. They're also not taught these things. Not in our pop culture, not in our schools, not by parents. NFL star Benjamin Watson spoke with Greta Van Susteren on her show on Wednesday after the Boston riots went viral. He said, ultimately, the problem is not a skin problem. It's a sin problem. I really like that. It's not a skin problem. It's not about the color of your skin, because we're all 99% the same. It's a sin problem, and this is something that all humanity has to deal with. He reiterated that message on the show. Only through a relationship with Jesus Christ is how we can really deal with these situations and deal with our problem. People are hurting and looking for answers, he said. The gospel gives us hope. I thought it was a very positive message. Not a skin problem, it's a sin problem. Something we all have to deal with. What gives us hope? The gospel. By the way, I just saw pictures of on Fox of the officers. 3 of them are black. Interesting. One of them is a black woman. So much for the racist cops, huh? Perception versus reality. Well, you have to join me every Friday to get the reality check. I thank you guys for listening Beyond Reason Radio. I will be back next Friday, of course, and I'll be on Bud Show Monday. But until then, have a great weekend, and I'll see you then. I look inside.